Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. You are listening to Venus Unplugged. And what is done with this broadcast is we talk about myths and goddesses, and feminine and masculine, the beauty, dreams, because an undernourished culture, when it doesn't have enough Venusian energy, if that energy gets exiled or sinned against or hurt, the feminine. I was reading something the other day that, and Jung, this was over 100 years ago, wrote a letter to Freud. They were working together, and Jung was supposedly going to be Freud's protege. Of course, that didn't happen very well. But Jung started to have different beliefs than Freud. Freud felt that man's flaw was sexuality, and Jung felt it was meaning, having the meaning for life, and they had two completely different understandings, about psyche and the unconscious. But at one letter, towards the end of their relationship, Jung writes that he feels, now, of course, this is totally visionary. This is a strong scientific man. He's having a vision that the feminine is coming back to consciousness, the goddess Sophia. Now, Sophia, and the word philosophy means lover of wisdom. Sophia is wisdom. And so she's a very important archetype or image, certainly in the Gnostic teachings, which are the more esoteric teachings of Christianity. And in the Gnostic teachings, it's essentially, you are your own religion. You're responsible for your connection to the divine, and you can have all these different beliefs and stories, but essentially it's up to you, which is so much of what myth, and certainly your own myth. Every day you're living out your myth, and hopefully with a little bit of consciousness, because it will start making sense to you what life keeps on pointing. Whatever we don't know about ourselves does return to us as fate. Why does this keep on happening? Well, write it out and separate it and start to symbolically see the meaning. When we can't solve a problem or an issue, it's because it comes from a much deeper part of ourselves, an unknown part. And when we begin to, I don't know that we can always befriend, but we certainly can make parts of ourselves conscious or more aware, like, wow, yeah, that really was, when we get absolutely right and a little bit obnoxious about it, and I'm absolutely right, there's no point of view from the other person or the situation, we're in trouble because we have split. And we all have the shadow sisters and shadow brothers, and we've been looking at this marvelous poem, Sumerian poem of Inanna and her dark sister Ereshkigal. So we have that twinning sister, the positive and the negative. Not in terms of, it's not positive and negative in terms of judgment value. It's opposite. And whenever you want to get yourself out of a pickle or a depression, or you're fighting with your beloved and you can't figure out why, there's an opposite that is going on that wants to be made conscious. We can have very different values on something. And very often people find out, oh, well, actually we're saying the same thing, but we're just saying it in a different way. So, Ereshkigal is called Inanna's sister in this Sumerian poem. And it is her shadow. So last week we talked about how Inanna goes into the underworld to meet her dark sister, and the sister takes one look at her. The sister is mourning the death of her husband, the bull of heaven, and she just takes one look, and she's obviously pissed at Ainana. And, and it's the ways of the underworld are perfect. You don't have any business being here. You don't know how this joint is run. And she just hangs her on a meat hook to rot, which is very much the crucifixion. And we all get hung on a meat hook at one point in our life where we're just hanging there and rotting, and we feel like nothing's ever going to change. I'm never going to have. I'm never going to get. But no, it's just our time to, we've run out of whatever attitude we have that it no longer works. So we usually encounter a disaster, which is an interesting word. Disaster, the root meaning of disaster is not following Ishtar, the heavens, the stars. And Ishtar and Ainana are similar goddesses. So, and speaking of the heavens, and today we're literally having a blue moon, and which means there's 2 full moons in the same sign. This time it's in Sagittarius, and it's at 29 degrees Sagittarius. So, we're all up looking at something about wisdom, about understanding. We may be changing a philosophy. We may have to have a broader perspective, because Sag is about wisdom. So this week is going to be action-packed, either nightmares, which the reason we have a nightmare is it's the dream maker within will only tell us what we don't know about ourselves. And when it's really a nightmare, it's like a code that doesn't want the ego to know what's going on, because the ego just is like, no, that's not true. That's not happening. No. You're white as the driven snow, and you're right. Well, I always get a little suspicious of that. It's like, yes, right from your point of view, right from your side, right from what you're representing, right from what you know about yourself. But it's what you don't know. That's when the growing pains begin. And it doesn't necessarily mean you may not know that you have courage. You may not know that you, I see this a lot, that you have a boundary. And you don't know it till somebody steps on it, or steps in it, or tries to take away your right to your privacy. It's like, well, I just hacked into your emails because I wanted to see what you were up to. It's like, what? Kidding me. So, and these twin sisters, the opposites live within, as, does the same with men. They have their anima and their Sophia within. But these goddesses and gods always they're always dual. And when you really devote your life to meaning, not just excuses, this happened because of. That's not necessarily meaning. That's just telling yourself the same old story. But the meaning is, what is really going on? What are these energies that are happening? What is trying to be born in me that is terrifying, or what needs to die and be let go of because it's actually in my way? I can't, maturity, which is what the art of life is really about, is maturing into, it's not about spending time and becoming old, becoming wise, what observing of life, and not just some homogenized little quick answer like, well, that's just your karma. Well, that doesn't suffice. But so Ereshkigal is Ainana's sister in the poem, her dark sister. And she's the shadow, or the shadow can be seen as the complement. So together, the two goddesses make kind of a bipolar wholeness pattern of the archetypal feminine. So Jung, over 100 years ago, felt this coming through. Now, he was, doing all his research and being deeply involved in the alchemical work, and also doing his now famous and popular The Red Book. So as he was doing this and working in these energies, he began to, I wouldn't call it prophecy, he began to have visions. He was feeling what was going on. Right? So in this, with the goddesses, right, and the archetypal feminine, so this also is the mother-daughter by unity of the great goddess. And so it's also the star of Inanna, above and below, because during this stir she is the youthful virgin, goddess of love and of harlots, and she's got this connection to her natural sexuality that she delights in, which I particularly am fond of that part. To be able to delight in one's sexual and creative energies just for the sheer joy of having it. You don't have to be acting it out. And if you do, cool. But make sure it's your own. You're doing what you want to do and expressing the art of lovemaking or flirting or beauty, whatever it may be. But it is about the joy. And it's yours. And it's not in exile. So much of the Venusian energy in our society is crucified and exiled. They put her on the borders of, indecency or wherever they're putting her, rather than this delightful, life-giving energy. So it's also these goddesses, they're of the great above, which Inanna is. They symbolize the way life energies engage actively with one another and how they flow together, including the connections that are loving or disjunctions that are just passionate. But we need that connection, and we're always connecting with a part of ourselves that we don't know. I mean, the singular, from my point of view, most important, I guess, truth would be the word, is, how we're always projecting. If we understood the nature of projection happens all by itself. Nobody provokes it. It is the way in which psyche shows us an aspect of ourself in the other. The old pot calling the kettle black, right? It's like, no, if this is what creates wars, this is what creates problems. We see an aspect, actually, of ourself. Now, it's not exactly, it's in the area of, you may not be acting out in a certain way as your supposed enemy is, but you got some of that going on, too. Now, the way that psyche works, it projects out so we can see it. It doesn't mean that person is that. They're kind of the model that we use, which is why we have these, religious wars in the face of my God is better than yours or whatever that might be. If we understood or just took a breath in and whatever we're projecting out, and one of the ways we kind of know it's a projection is our refusal. Oh, no, me? I could never do that. Well, we're all capable of doing lots of things that we don't see, right? It's so important. And then being able to say, wow, that's my shadow sister. That's a part of me I didn't know about. I may need that. That person maybe too assertive. And you think, well, so maybe do I need some assertion? Do I need to, stop being so understanding and just, call it what it is? or the assertion of walking away. So we look at it, we find its opposite. In this case, it's the heavenly queen and the underworld queen of Ereshkigal. So below is equally as important as above. So the goddess or the axiom, as above, so below, that's what they're talking about. That's what the ancient esoteric laws are talking about. If it's true in heaven, it's true in hell. If it's true on earth, it's true within ourselves, right? So the shadow goddesses in this poem, and they're playing out this dance. But they're actually one and the same. And that's true of all of us. We have what we think we know about ourselves, and then there's what we don't know. And when we don't know comes visiting and knocking, it's usually not welcome the first 100 times. It's kind of like, oh man, no, really? Really? Yeah, really. So the below, which is too often repressed, is the energy that turns back on itself. So the goddess of the great above symbolizes all the ways life energies engage actively and with one another, and how they flow together. Then, including the connections that are loving, below, which is often repressed, is the energy that turns back on itself and goes down into self-preserving introversions. And it's the energy that makes a woman able to separate unto herself and to survive alone. So if there's way too much extroversion, which is very simple in America. America is an extroverted thinking country. So we act everything out. And so introversion is kind of rare. And the introversion is, well, also when people meditate, they're aware. I need to go in. I need to be still. I need to, find out what's really going on within me. So that's also what the underworld. And for some people, introversion is hell. Or if you suddenly are very quiet, it's like, what's the matter? Nothing's the matter. I'm listening, to what's going on inside. So psychologically, we see these two energy patterns in a person who's empathetic and often self-isolating. So when we need to self-isolate, when we're not in exile, right? We are moving into the Ereshkigal or the unknown aspect that is below. And the below is the energy. It's cooking up, and we need that energy to be able to say, before I react here, give yourself 72 hours. 7 and 2 is a 9. 9 is the number of completion. 9 is also the number of Sophia, wisdom, and play it out inside yourself for 72 hours and see what you come up with. See if you feel the same way, or you can certainly maybe understand what the person saw, or even understand, like, wow, really, that was their projection, nothing personal, and I don't even have to respond because I see it for what it is. We don't have to correct everything. Sometimes it's best just to walk away because that's what the situation calls for, or it's wasting your hard-earned wisdom on somebody who's not ready. It's like watching teenagers and how all that they need to go through, and it's so important because they're in such anguish. They're having to separate Therefore, they need to make the adult world the enemy, or the caretaker the enemy, so that they don't stay infantile. So it's hard on everybody, but it must be done. So when we go psychologically into these two energy patterns, if we know that they're in relationship to one another, and this happens in creative projects, this happens in personal, at work, somebody's always, and there's always somebody who's the scapegoat, there's always somebody who's the hero. The archetypal realm is constantly playing itself out. And when we can start to notice and have some insight, it's very interesting what is really happening. So this does not make the goddesses pathological. It doesn't make a person pathological. If we need times where we just kept, the outside world is just too much, we need to go within. And sometimes that comes as a depression. Where the depression is just saying, chill your energy a little bit. Let's go for a tour of duty into our inner world. And it's a way, for many women, we get caught in the need to separate. We think we should always be in there. No, or feel guilty about needing to go off by yourself, or just not wanting to play that role. You don't feel like being. That's not a good day to be whatever role people dream you up for. And it happens all very unconsciously. It's like, how'd I get this position? Well, if the shoe fits, you're going to go to the prom. But when the self, with a capital S, starts becoming conscious or more alive in you, it is the self that can recognize the shadow and light, no judgment. It's just shadow and light. All right. And then we can start getting a sense of the complexity of who you are as a person, of the role that you play with your psyche, and the development of your own wholeness. Right? So there's a pattern in many pairs of goddesses, right? Athena and Medusa. Well, it's a doozy. And Medusa is the one with serpents in her head. She's the one who's envious, and that's the shadow aspect of Athena, whose wisdom and serves. She was actually born out of her father's head, so she wasn't born from a mother. And that's another thing. When you see the birth of the story, the birth of these goddesses, how are they, have they come into the consciousness? And so the heavenly Aphrodite and the opposite of her Uranian Aphrodite, and that's the eldest of the fates. And then there's Mother Kali and the devouring Kali Durga, the light and the dark side of the moon. So we can consider these pairs of opposites as two kinds of energy that begin to tell us the story. They tell us the half we don't know. So we can muse on that. What is it that I don't know about myself that's maybe tripping me up? Or that you have a talent or a gift that you are giving to somebody else, and it's actually yours. It's like, no, you're the one that could do that. So when we start to recognize that there is always opposites, and we have enough consciousness or courage to say, what's the opposite in here? Or just play out the story. It's classical theater. And what am I related to? And what is the not-so-cool part and kind of the ugly, smelly part? Or what we don't know, and realize, like, wow, what if you could feel comfortable with that part that's not so developed? so aware. Or when a conflict happens, say, wait a second. Is there any truth in what my enemy says? And if there is, we can correct that. We then may not be able to stop it. We may only be able to get as far as going like, that's kind of, I do that. Yeah. Or some people get hot and fiery and yelling and screaming, and other people get cold like a serpent. And a lot of people are very terrified when the feminine gets cold because it's no longer human. And so it's, they're so cold-blooded, right? That's intense. They're cold. They're not feeling. They're not related. They are not interested in your problem. You can just rot on that meat hook. And we've all been at both sides of that. So then we know, okay, I'm running through the polarity of the shadow and the light of the sisters and within myself. So when that happens, that awareness, certainly when it first happens, it's almost like, whose reality am I in? Or we'll take it literally. Sometimes if I'm in a conflict about something, trying to understand, I will go, I'll write something down. I'll say, all right, well, let me just look at the etymology of this word. And what is happening here? Same way you would with a dream. You read your dictionaries of symbolisms and your etymology. What is it revealing? Because it's psyches. It's not the image of symbolism. It's psyche's logic, so it's not our ego logic. So when we can relate to the feminine, both in her dark and light side, in her erotic side, in her impassioned, and in the death and the ending or the mourning, and not panic, like, oh, wow, I was so happy yesterday, and now it's been all taken away. No, it's the ebb and the flow without the two of them constantly moving. But that's what we call life. So when someone, let's say, is more of an Erishka Gal figure, they may be more, more introverted. It's like a friend of mine when I need to introvert. She goes, no, okay, Persephone, she'll be back, and she knows me for so many years. It's just that you kind of disappear, but you're deep in the middle of working something out. That's not necessarily. Sometimes I don't even know. It's just kind of fall silent, What I do know is something's cooking in there. So when you give yourself the silence to just start to feel what's cooking, you'd be surprised how much energy you're going to wake up with and have. So this myth is teaching us what is life enhancing, and that life is all circular. As above, so below. It goes around and around, the life and death, and what happens in our life. And this week in particular, it's going to be a very high-end aspect of life. A lot of revelations, a lot of growing up, a lot of letting go to what no longer works. Nobody has to be mean about it. We can just step away from it gracefully. And sometimes silence, not the cold, meany kind of silence, where you want where you want to ghost somebody, but the silence that says, no, if I say something, this is only going to inflame the situation. I'll wait. I'll get my moment to say what needs to be said. So, this is what we're understanding, the matrix of these transpersonal energies, and they are quite acceptable And so we needn't reject any aspect of ourselves. We can say, yeah, that's true too. You can be the Holy One and you can be the monster. But that's who we all are. We are developing our humanity, which can be pretty extraordinary, and developing the wisdom. And in order to have a wisdom, we need to be tested to see if we can remember it in the moment. And then suddenly all the difficulties, all the tumult that you may be having suddenly just eases. And then you realize, oh, I've just, got a hook on the opposite, and I can keep a balance on that. So till next week, au revoir.
Progressive presents Mindflowness with Flow.
Before you lies a beautiful meadow. In that meadow, Progressive Direct has placed its auto insurance rates alongside those of competitors. You select the lowest rate and feel a great sense of calm. A great sense of...
Compare Progressive Direct rates with competitors' rates so you can rest easy. Visit Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy. Vary based on how you buy.